Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our calls to order. Wednesday, 9:04. Our we'll start with introduction. End of the table here.
Jennifer Paul and Theo. Adrian Miller, yeah. Laura Jackson, yeah.
Sean Northup, FDO.
This is Hollister, City of Greenwood. Mark Myers, Mayor Greenwood.
Anna Gremley, I am yeah.
Right over Greenwood. Dot.
Ryan Wolbeck, FDO.
George Lewis, Zionsville.
Lance, Zionsville.
Rita Meyer, Sarah.
Scott Singleton, Mount Springfield. Bill Manchu, City of Carlton. Liv Morrow, City of Greenfield. Brian Kaden, Town of Avon. John Ayers, Richmond.
Carmen Young, Donna White.
Dan Lawson.
I'm Jim Penn, City of Lawrence.
Renee Raffles, City of Lawrence.
Stephen Walls, DCCM.
David Whitetown.
Dave Sheets, City of Indianapolis. Michael Pierce, City of Westfield.
Christine Olson, Service. Alex, Evansville.
Davidson. Dates, Wilton, Frank, Finance, Town of Speedway. Matt, Town of Rutherford. Matt Bill, City of Franklin. Current Town of Barberville. Daniel Johnston, White Road, Porterville.
Tim Cochran, City of Beech Grove.
Nikki Mueller, Town of Cumberland.
Paul Pione, City of Greenwood. Benny Fisher, Morgan Cat. Park Porterville.
David.
Dave Michael, Lock Newman Group. David, looking, CFT.
Karen Miller,
Bill, A&M Engineering. Ryan Wolbeck,
Ian Sale, PMCS.
Crossroad.
Okay, well, welcome, everybody. I will ask that if you speak up. We managed to sit under the loudest vent here. But, very good. We'll start with items for approval, the 2026 through 29 Transportation Improvement Program amendments with Laura.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Laura. For those of you who haven't met me yet, I'm the newest member of the TIP programming section. And today I'm presenting to you the quarter 2S TIP amendments. These amendments in this quarter were up for public review and comment from June 5th to June 15th. We didn't receive any public comments via our website or email submission. And then we also hosted 2 virtual public hearings this Monday, and we didn't have any people in the public come and comment on the amendments this round. This quarter, we had 23 INDOT amendment requests, making up 16 new projects and 3 revised projects. And then we had 4 projects that were removed from the TIF due to those projects not moving forward, or one was particularly completely state funded, so that was removed. You will see that there was an update. We did have 25 initial amendment requests, but 2 of those were removed due to their non-exempt status. After we submitted our ICG coordination email, FTA came back and said that 2 of those projects were actually non-exempt. So those 2 projects will move to our August meeting to align with an MTP amendment. Any questions about the INDOT amendment requests this quarter? Okay, hearing none. We also had 5 local amendment requests. These were all new projects, and none of them impact our annual allocation, and none of them had any IMPO funding on them, so pretty straightforward this quarter. Any questions about those?
Okay, this is a matter for public hearing. We'll open it up for public hearing. Does anybody from the public wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move. Fair with the.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second? Second. Shree, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
We also wanted to give you a quick update about the state fiscal year 2030 call for projects. As many of you know, that we've been in conversation with IMPO to determine the continuation of the federal funds exchange program, and perhaps Anna can give a quick update for you all about that.
Yeah, sure. I took a couple of the executive committee members and we met with the INDOT commissioner to talk about just how well the federal exchange program is working for our locals. We did follow up with an official request to extend the program for 3 years. I will tell you, we are not going to get it for 3 years for certain on that. But I did ask for a response by July 1. Just the uncertainty of the national level with the transportation bill expiring on September 30th. I think INDOT is definitely looking on a shorter term, but no commitments have been made. But I did just kind of try to put it out there for a multi-year commitment because, you know, not. But we hope to hear back by July 1 on that. So fingers crossed that is a positive response.
Yeah, and with that date in mind, we hope to be able to share maybe early August, any kind of schedule or funding availability for this upcoming fall for projects. And with that, some of you may know that we've also been working with our consultant High Street about revising our selection criteria. That is still in the works and very much in the testing phase. And so we've been working with our selection criteria subcommittee as well. And just due to the timeline, we've decided that for state fiscal year 2030, we're gonna use our current and existing selection criteria. So regardless of your funding type, this year's call for project will use our current and existing selection criteria. And then we hope to approve this new revised selection criteria near the end of this year to then be applied to the 2027 call for projects. Any questions about those updates?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Up next, the 2027 Unified Planning Work Program. Sean? Okay.
The 2027 work program. This is like our plan. It is a federally required document that we do every year showing how we're spending our federal funds. In the packet, you'll see there's the activities table. Which we're gonna pull up for a second here. You can look at that. Then there's the full document. It's okay. Then there's the full document that gets into more details with it. This year, as Anna mentioned, it's the last year of the transportation bill. We actually saw about a $400,000 reduction in funding in PL this year. That's combined funds from federal highway and federal transit. It's just the way that INDOT kind of divides up the appropriation over the bill over the years. This was the last one. There was kind of less money set aside this year than previous years. It's the first and most significant reduction we've seen in several years, but it's been up about 3 years in a row. And if it's made under the new bill, it'll go up again. So we went from basically 3.8 federal planning funds last year to about 0.4 million this year. Of that, we set aside 2.5% under the most recent transportation bill. We're allowed to do that for 3% funds in streets projects. So for 2026 and 2027, those 100% funds will go on to the active transportation plan. That plan is kicked off yesterday and will carry over into next year. So the total program, we also have the 100% government relations contracts, which we maintain entirely with local funds. The entire program is for next year, local and federal is $4.2 billion. There's a few different things that we're doing with that. Some, obviously that funds staff overhead, rent, parking, facility, all the stuff that we do, all of our equipment and everything like that. Salaries and benefits. There are about 6 projects that we need to complete going into next year. We have the Indigo onboard survey, a large update to the travel demand model, moving to an activity-based model. That's a major shift and the exciting new tool that we'll have. The active transportation plan, we will complete the tip scoring update that many of you have been involved in. The SERV committee will complete its second iteration. It's going to begin before the end of this year and then carry over the year. And then strategic model will have vision eval, which is a modeling program that allows us to figure out the impacts of different policy decisions and kind of weigh those. That's going to be an interesting process. We're going to start that next year and see where it takes us. We just came back from Atlanta. They're very high on that software that see a sketch modeling is kind of the future of modeling. It's very much of iteration. We have a major update to the MTP beginning at the end of this year and then carrying on through all of next year. Joe T is going to manage that from our staff. Ben's in Ben's section. That'll be a 2055 MTP. The largest single expense that we have on the planning side is our replica data. So continue to make use of that, traffic counts and put those requests for that as baked into our TIP process. It's something that we are maintaining long term. We are due for a new contract on MyTIP. So Kristen is busy renegotiating that contract and making sure that is up and running. We need to restore our resiliency projects, that portion of the MTP. We have some mobility grants and some funds set aside to study the impacts of tolling in our ability. Beyond that, it's mostly operational support, legal translation contract, graphic design, website, social media ads, public involvement, engineering cost review for the TIP, those kind of things. So a fairly heavy year again next year, ramping up to the new MTP is kind of the. Any questions about the UPW?
No questions, Sean? This is an item up for approval. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move Karen.
Jim,
City Lawrence.
do I have a second?
Second, well,
Second, Will, aye. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Membership dues.
All right, so the local match portion, that's right, we need to match all of the federal funds that we get 80-20. The exception of that government relations contract, $65,000 and that 2.5% set aside for complete streets. So this year that comes out to $830,000 plus the government relations is $895,000. The way that we pay that is we set aside the very small communities, and there's a minimum balance for very small populations for both municipalities and counties. So Shelby County only has a very small piece in our planning area. It pays a minimum there. Lebanon, just I think a few dozen people that live in Lebanon are in, and so they pay a minimum there. I believe it's $500 or something like that for membership. Plan to continue that. And then we have minimums for transit, different for CERTA and for Indigo. We reduce that from the total and then take the remainder and divide that per rate. It's based on population for the rest. Everyone for across the board, because of the reduction, dues are pretty much flat. They're down just a little bit from last year to this year. So not much change on the local match side. Any questions about local matches? After we have this vote, if it were to pass, we will send out our invoices. So.
Okay. Okay, no questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
Move Karen.
Jim, do I have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so then IMPO strategic plan, Rich Oldmeyer.
Yeah, so Rich is going to join us virtually from wherever he is in the world. Kind of where is Carmen San Diego? I never really know where Rich is. We kicked off this process earlier this year. This is our second strategic plan for the IMPO. The first strategic plan was adopted in 2018, and that led to the separation of the IMPO to be a separate government entity. And codify ourselves and start to branch out into other regional topics as needed. It honestly, even post separation, I feel like the first year or two, we were just making sure all of our policies were aligning with what we were doing as far as accounting manual and HR. This year really felt like a good year to kind of take a step back and say, okay, we're 5 years into an independent organization. Transportation will always be our bread and butter and the thing, right? But there have been needs and right conversations and housing and these other areas. So now just felt like a really good time to take a step back organizationally. There's another regional organization also working on some of the cross jurisdictional items. And so with that, I'm just gonna kick it over to Rich.
Hi, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah,
Excellent. And let's see if I can share my screen. Is that working? Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
great.
in presentation view.
Oh, yeah, here we go. How's that? Oh, hold on one sec. Sorry. How's that? Is that better?
Might need to speak up a little bit, Rich. It's pretty loud in the room.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That used to be last time. Is that you? We will
Can you
turn
hear
it
me?
back on in a second.
Sorry. Am I waiting?
Yep, 1 second.
Yep, okay.
So I can tell you, last week, several of us traveled to Atlanta to meet with the Atlanta Regional Council, the MPO for the Atlanta region, just to talk through some of the things that we think they're doing well. That was an insightful trip, just as part of the strategic plan process and trying to get outside of central Indiana and look at other regions, what they're doing well. This year we did one site visit. I think in 2018 we did 2 site visits. So. Rich, we're ready.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. Yeah, calling in from Rhode Island. That's where you find me today. So thanks, Anna, for the intro. Yeah, so I'm just going to go through some slides and then certainly prepare for questions. So as we started the strategic planning process, one of the things that I think we noticed is that just the use of the 4 pillars that were defined as part of the last process that we helped with. And I think these have really been embodied by staff. And so we really wanted to, as we started the planning, we wanted to think about how do we keep using this framework, these 4 pillars to advance the work that we're going to, both review what's going on currently and then contemplate what could be done in the future. So this idea of convening, informing, planning, and funding definitely seemed to resonate with staff and with board members that we've talked to about it. So the strategic framework, I think, ultimately what we're presenting today is really working draft. I think, we're still digesting, to Anna's point, a little bit of what we learned in Atlanta and just overall having conversations with staff and board members. But we wanted to kind of share with you sort of where we are in the current space. So there's a couple things. If you look at the bottom of this slide, we're looking at both elevation of existing priorities that the MPO has been, core to the mission of the MPO and the work that's being done. And then look at activating some new priorities. I mean, in some of the new priorities, you'll see some areas where the MPO has been performing and we want to kind of continue or expand that work. But there's also some new things that we're introducing as part of the planning process. So yeah, we've heard loud and clear from everyone that transportation leadership obviously is the core of the MPO organization and the work that you're doing. I think really thinking about, some expansion of that role as a regional coordinator and convener around the work of transportation in the central Indiana. One of the things we want to look at is establishing a regional transportation safety leadership agenda. Obviously, transportation safety is a critical issue. There's been work obviously being done, but more, I think the idea of like formalizing this even a little more is something we've talked about. And then, yeah, I think, funding, like always could use more money. So strive to bring additional funds into central Indiana as the opportunities arise. At both the federal and potentially state levels. On the federal planning leadership, again, I think you'll see here a lot of the continuation of the work that's being done. One of the things that we've contemplated is on the plan side here of looking at a decision matrix to assess federal planning opportunities. There's a little bit, there's still some things coming out from the federal government and there's more expected. And so how does the MPO look at and prioritize sort of where to place its efforts for the support of the future? And then also, collaboration with the RDA to execute. It's time for the SEDS update. And so I know there's discussion about like what that collaboration would look like, but it's important to, I think, have the SEDS update for the Economic Development Administration. It adds emphasis to any project funding that folks are looking to get from the EDA, from the Economic Development Administration. And then internal operations, I think this is one, I think, looking across learning opportunities for staff, things are constantly changing, obviously. And so like really trying to formalize, what is that shared learning that staff can engage in. We also on the plan side look at really building development plans for high potential staff. One of the things I know there's some succession planning that's happened in the past, but really update that planning and form it as a living document. One of the things I've said to Anna is like, between this plan and last plan, I think almost every leader and every other organization has moved on and there's new leadership. And so it's just a reality. And so I think making sure that there's succession planning for leadership and all down through the staffing ranks is really important these days for an organization. And then, yeah, AI, everybody probably has this bullet on their strategic plan these days about really what is ongoing exploration and assessment of AI for both internal and external activities, and really understanding risks and opportunities with that is something that, we're recommending. Yep, I think that, and then, yeah, internal operations just to stay competitive, to continue to hire and retain good staff. So a couple of the new priority areas, housing is one area that we've heard a lot of conversation and need around. It seems to be an area that, again, there's several organizations that touch on housing within Central Indiana, but really there's not like a convening force. And so we see that as an opportunity, I think, because the MPOs, the trusted convening role that they play in a lot of issues that folks have identified through our interviews, that makes sense for them to be that convener, and whether that bringing together advocates, the support organizations, planners. I think one of the things we heard a lot in Atlanta is they're very aggressively, first been asked and now sort of kind of growing in their housing space, and so they've created a number of resources for their communities to to the extent that they need them to tap into. But we definitely heard even from the communities that they're definitely using the resources that are developed. And so in this area, I think what we're looking at is, in this first phase, I think one of the deliberations we're having now is like, there is probably a phased process of what that, continuation of what's been happening with housing. So, the regional housing plan had been done a couple of years ago. I think now the question is what's next, and like, what is that menu of services we should contemplate, and how do we prioritize and fund those going forward? Yeah, I think that's it there. Start to try to make sure I'm not missing anything. The next one is land use planning. I think this is one that, we know that there's been activity ongoing in the past around land use planning. So you see a couple continued things here. We've also heard around, looking at a zoning inventory for Central Indiana. It's an area that several regions are creating these kind of zoning atlases to make it easier for everyone to understand sort of zoning uses across jurisdictions. And so that's an area that we're contemplating. And then, yeah, I think looking at land use specific studies and plans, so leveraging, funding to be able to do those activities. We heard a lot of that again from Atlanta in terms of what they do with a centers program that they have that focuses on helping to do small area plans and other sort of support planning activities for the municipalities within their jurisdictions. And then innovation, I think, there's a couple areas that have come up. One is just there's a lot of tools and vendors that are constantly knocking on the door of all the municipal planning staff. Is there a testing and tools collaborative around some of those things? So I think Sean mentioned replica. The cost of these things are not going down, and sometimes it's hard to look at the efficacy and the use overall of any of these tools. And so that there's an opportunity, we think, to share that. And then the other thing is the creation of a mobility innovation task force. We're seeing in a lot of other regions, and the team that went to Atlanta can tell you Waymos are driving autonomously everywhere on the streets of Atlanta now. And that's happening in several other cities right now. And so that's just the beginning, right? There's other forms of mobility. We also saw in Atlanta the delivery robots, the smaller ones that kind of roll on the sidewalks, which basically have just been dropped there. There's no real exploration of sort of what permitting or anything like that. And so we think there's an opportunity here to really think about mobility overall, and the innovation that is coming to central Indiana, and sort of how to get ahead of some of the issues that other communities have had when those things start happening and there's no regulatory framework or permitting framework or those kinds of things. Yeah, and then the technical backbone, I think this is right. So, like, again, taking sort of what's been happening currently and really thinking about continuing to enhance the regional planning data platform, just as a central resource for all the communities. And then, yeah, looking at the regional indicators and community snapshot program outside of what's currently being collected, we want to pursue what else should be there to help inform decision making. And then related to that is the technical assistance and analytics support. So there's a lot of reactive sort of phone calls of like, hey, I need help with this. And so we want to just look at how do we, expand that work and formalize to the extent possible, to make sure it's clear what that role can be for the region. So I wanted to go through those real fast just to sort of put those out there. These are the things that, like I said, we're currently working on. Trying to flesh out exactly what does it mean over a multi-year time horizon. Can't do everything day one, but like what does that look like, and what's the detail of each one of these is where our work is involved now. So with that, I want to pause and just see if there's any questions, and obviously have a couple of questions for you all here. Anything that you want to react to and tell us, do more of or think more about, or maybe take a slower pace at some of it. So anyhow, open for dialogue at this point.
I feel like Rich did throw a lot at you. On that list, obviously, was transportation, housing, land use, federal stuff, playing at the federal level, trying to be more coordinated, trying to bring money to central Indiana, though, with this administration or even the new transportation bill, there's gonna be less grant opportunities. At least that is the conversation right now. We want more money to go through formula funds. It's kind of what the coalition, at least our coalition, is pushing: more formula funds, less national, because we don't do well winning national grants typically. Yeah, thoughts, opinions? I will send this PowerPoint out next week as well. So if you have additional thoughts, feel free to reply all and get us your thoughts. I also, as part of the follow-up of this meeting, we have some additional information on SEA 179. So I'll send those two out.
Yeah, and we're available. Obviously, if there's any direct conversation, any ideas, especially as we look at these, trying to refine into the specific, examples of needs that communities have had that resonate with what we're talking about. I think those are always welcome.
Thank you, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
All right, good seeing you guys again.
All right, next, the safety action plan update and Vision Zero, Dan Mulson.
I was like, if you need me to kill time, I can start my other items.
I do a quick intro. My name is Dan Ransom. I work with Kimberly Board, the consultant project manager supporting Andrea Miller and her team with the safety action plan update. I presented to you all back in February. Thanks, Brett. I presented you all back in February with a little midway update. We're a lot closer to the end of the project now. So we just wanted to give one more update with where we're at and what we need to do still to wrap this project up. So I'll speak a little bit more to the microphone if that's helpful. Want to talk through 4 things today. One, touch on the high entry network once again from February, and then also talk about the completion of the new piece of this plan, the vulnerable road user assessment. Want to talk about how we're going and identifying what we're calling our community safety zones and how we're going about scoring those project opportunities within the plan. I want to talk about where we ended up after introducing the updated Vision Zero commitment options last time in February, the feedback we got from the steering committee there. And then lastly, I'll wrap up with what we have left before that plan comes back for adoption by this. So I'll talk through first the high entry network really quickly. This is a refresher. This is one of the required elements of the safety action plan. We used the same 2022 methodology, basically just brought in newer crash data from the 2022 update. So 2020 through 2024 crash data really focused now more on suspected serious injury. And then we had a few shorter segments than we did in the past, just with like really short roadway segments in the downtown area in Indianapolis. The thing we wanted just to touch on, just to show how this type of network changes over time as we get new crash data with the methodology that's used. So about a little less than half of the new high entry network was also part of the 2022 high entry network. So while there are a lot of new segments that are popping up based on more recent crash data, if you look at some of the most common corridors here, 38th Street, Keystone Way, Arlington Avenue, Shadeland Avenue, County Road 100 North and 10th Street, or Madison Avenue and County Line Road. Those are some of the roads that were on the high entry network in 2022 and continue to be on the high entry network today. So we wanted to call those out, especially because they were showing up as high crash corridors before, and they still are today. Also wanted to touch on what we did for our vulnerable road user assessment. That was a new piece of the safety action plan update. This will be a new chapter to the safety action plan when it goes out for review. And this is really focused on identifying segments and intersections specifically of high risk for pedestrians and cyclists. So we look at segment and intersection risk factors, we look at census data, we look at mobile location and driver behavior data, and we kind of combine all those factors together to identify the most risky segments for pedestrians and for cyclists across the IMPO region. So as an example, for this data analysis, we're using a broader stretch of data just because there tend to be fewer crashes for VRUs than there are crashes overall. So we're looking at 7 years of data, and we plug in a bunch of different segment risk factors. So everything from volume to roadway characteristics like median type or shoulder width to proximity to land use, like is the road near a school or a public park or a library. Similarly, do the same thing for intersections. What's the skew angle of the intersection? How many entering lanes? How many legs on the intersection? What's the traffic control? Is it signalized or stop controlled? And then for census data, we look at risk factors like what's the percentage of households without a vehicle, or percentage of households or population that's elderly or youth or with disabilities. And then what's the overall population density and percentage of households in poverty within a given census tract, to understand how those different factors might correlate with a greater risk in bicycle and pedestrian injury from crashes. And then lastly, the final component that factored into this analysis is Replica's Safe Streets Planner tool that the IMPO has access to. So that tool outputs risk scores on a scale of 0 to 100, which is kind of that matching scale that we used for these other factors, but it's looking more at driver event data. So where are we seeing instances of speeding or hard braking or distracted driving? And Replica is able to look at phone use data, telemetrics data from in-car, in-vehicle phones, in-vehicle GPS units to draw inferences on some of that. And then it also is able to do things like estimate the number of bicycle and pedestrian trips along the corridor, alongside estimating the vehicular traffic along that corridor.
So we take all of this information, we combine it into our model, and then we sort out and see what segments and intersections come out on top, and we really break it down into two categories. So we looked at the top 10 segments and intersections within the urban core, that would be considered within Marion County, and then the top 10 segments and intersections across the surrounding communities. So all of those parts of the IMPO region that are outside of Marion County, just because we realize that characteristics of those roadways and intersections can be different from one another. And then lastly, we reviewed and ranked those segments and intersections, again, to avoid overrepresentation of any one part of the network. So the outcome for those top 10 intersections, what you see in the black triangles, and the top 10 segments, what you see in the red lines, you'll notice there's about 10 of them in that Marion County core each, and then 10 of them spread on the outer portions of the IMPO region. And so these were sort of the outcomes of the corridors and the intersections to focus on. And the safety action plan will include a separate chapter that goes into more detail on these results and how this methodology came about. So the other piece out of this is we're taking all of this analysis that's been done, and as we mentioned before, we're trying to identify not just the regional highest risk locations, but want to give every community, every IMPO member a map to work with that identifies, based on that regional methodology, where are the roads that you really can focus on within your community to make your roads safer, to make the roads within your community safer. So to do that, we've revamped a little bit how we are doing a scoring and evaluation of the project locations that we identify within this safety action plan. And want to just refresh that. We realize that a lot of communities that are on the routes there are developing their own safety action plans. This is not going to override that. The safety action plan that you're developing, if your community received a SS4A grant, will still be what you're able to use going forward with your safety planning. But the idea here was for every community that hasn't done that process yet, we wanted to provide them something to start with, and that's what we're calling our community safety zone maps. So communities are going to be able to use that map and then take a look at the segments that are on that map to propose projects that can then be submitted to the IMPO for evaluation. So community safety zones from different communities, obviously there are communities that are bigger that have a lot of crash history. There are communities that we saw that didn't have any fatal or serious injury crashes in the past 5 years, but still potential risk factors for future crashes that we wanted to call out. So there may be some segments from your community safety zone map on the regional high entry network. There may be some segments that aren't on the regional high entry network, but do have that severe crash history. And there may be some segments that don't have any crash history, but have higher risk factors that are associated with severe crashes more broadly across the region. And those maps are going to be available both for municipalities and for the unincorporated portions of counties within the IMPO planning area. So just a reminder, we're doing this because this is a requirement of the SS4A program. We need to have that comprehensive set of projects and strategies, and then time ranges when those projects will be deployed and an approach to prioritize them. So the change, and we got this vetted by the Safety Steering Committee, and the Safety Steering Committee had approved this methodology at their meeting last month, is that members will no longer have to submit their projects and then have them scored through this approach. The project team that's working on the safety action plan now has generated those opportunity areas that y'all can use to develop projects along that are focused on safety. And the factors that we're looking for in each of those project opportunity areas are listed there. So we look at, is it a part of a safety zone? Is it the highest priority safety zone within your community? Is it a project that has severe crash history? Is it on the regional HIN? And then is that project part of a past IMPO safety audit that IMPO staff has conducted so that they're already identifying things that can be improved? And the reason for doing this, first and foremost, is it really simplifies things, makes it easier for members to submit project opportunities and project ideas that can then be scored consistently across the region. Based on scoring results in the plan, projects are going to be sorted into 3 tiers at natural breaks and project scoring. And then based on those tiers grouped as recommended for short-term, medium-term, or longer-term implementation. That isn't a binding thing. You don't have to submit your first project as a short-term, but it's just our initial recommendation for the regional plan, just because that's one of the required elements of the safety action plan under the SS4A program. So Cumberland, we picked that as an example community to show how we do this, just because it contains a few different types of segments. It contains segments with crash history. It contains community safety zone segments that are from the high risk network, so they don't have the crash history, but have some risk factors associated with the road. So we have 3 example projects up here: 700 West that has some crash history, West 100 North, and then 10th Street German Church Road, which is from the high risk network segment. You can see how each of those 5 factors that I mentioned would be applied to come up with a total score for those 3 segments. And then from that total score, what the proposed project timeframe would be. And we're repeating that process for each community, just to give each community a starting point of, hey, here are some roads that you can focus on, and there'll be additional guidance on what countermeasures might be appropriate for those roads included as part of the safety action. So last thing I wanted to touch on, I realize I'm going through a lot here, so happy to answer questions afterwards. But back in February, we met to discuss a couple of different options for potentially updating the Vision Zero goal commitment for the region. Again, that's a requirement of this safety action planning process, is that regional commitment to reduce or eliminate fatal and serious injury crashes. The existing resolution talks about reducing fatal and serious injury crashes by 35% by the year 2040. And it used a single year crash average with a baseline year set at 2020. Obviously, 2020 was a very chaotic year, and a few years after that as well, we saw a lot of changes to crash patterns as they were occurring through the COVID pandemic. That 2040 target, based on the initial methodology, was set at 467 fatal and serious injury crashes. That's where we want to get to from where we are now across the region. The recommended update from the Safety Steering Committee was to keep the overall goal the same, just change a little bit about how we're measuring. So instead of updating our baseline year to 2023, using a 5-year rolling average of crashes, so it's a bit smoother from year to year, and you can see on this updated chart how that 5-year rolling average helps smooth things out and make it a little bit more clear, separating the noise from the actual trend. And at a past meeting, the Safety Steering Committee voted on and recommended this as the update. So maintaining that goal of reducing FSI crashes, fatal and serious injury crashes, by 35% by the year 2040, but just changing a bit how that's tracked. So that new resolution will come to the IMPO for consideration and adoption at the next meeting in August. And the plan is for that adoption to occur concurrently with the adoption of the safety action plan. So last thing I want to just touch on, one last slide to wrap things up. Just want to give this group an update on what's left. So the IMPO, we're going to submit the IMPO to the IMPO, the draft safety action plan, at the end of this month. The IMPO is going to review it, and then next month that document will go out for the public review. Separately, the IMPO's safety audit program will be taking place this summer, starting next month. And then the plan, along with the Vision Zero request for adoption, will come back to this board for review and adoption at the August meeting. And so separately from all this, we do also plan to host a Central Indiana Safety Summit tied to this grant, just to get folks aware of the new plan, understand what's in there, and then talk about what we can do as a region to focus more on safety and improve, make strides on roadway safety in Central Indiana. So you'll hear more about that sometime soon. That's still in the works, but just wanted to give a little preview on what we've got left on this project. So with that, I'll stop talking and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I did also want to give a shout out. I was very excited to see IMPD Indianapolis has picked up on the high injury network, and they are doing some targeted enforcement on the high injury network of Keystone particularly. They were out there, speed seems to be a factor. So overlaying, right, we've identified these corridors to be an issue. You know, what is it, the design, you know, is it an enforcement issue? And so to see IMPD out there was pretty exciting to start to see the planning work actually go into enforcement. So
Absolutely, it's great. Well, I guess that's all for me. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll answer any questions if you'll have any after the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. And next, annual safety report, final report from Andrea.
righty.
Right, thank you so much. So I know Dan just went over a ton of information for you, so I'm gonna keep this annual safety report relatively brief. As a reminder, this is the tracking component for our Vision Zero goal and part of the broader safety action plan process. So it's really dedicated to enhancing that transparency and also just general awareness on an annual basis about safety around our region. And we just had a nice review from Dan, but as a reminder, the Vision Zero resolution reduces serious and fatal crash is to reduce serious and fatal crashes by 35% by the year 2030. So as Dan pointed out, so one of the items I really want to focus on is there's a lot of up and down from year to year that we've seen, and as Dan kind of highlighted, the goal of the revised Vision Zero is to kind of smooth out that tracking. So you'll see just in general in the chart on the right, the red line is our serious and fatal crashes. You can see a lot of up, down, up, down. The main elements that I really want to focus on are the large rising crashes in 2020 and 2021. And then there is a lot of, again, up and down. In 2025, we did see a reduction in crashes, serious and fatal crashes by 10%. And currently fatal and serious crash numbers are above 2020 levels and the Vision Zero goal is not being met. So again, it's kind of hard to see our general trajectory using this current methodology. So in future annual safety reports, provided you agree with the modification, we will be adapting this to provide a little bit of a better overview of what's going on. As always, I do just want to take a brief moment to highlight the people behind the crash numbers. I think it's very easy to look at numbers like a 20% rise, a 10% reduction, and to really just lose sight of what that actually means. So in 2025, 731 people were injured in a suspected serious injury crash, and 112 people were killed. And over the 7-year period from 2019 to 2025, 935 people were killed, so nearly 1,000 people in our region alone. So yeah, I just want to sit with that. I also think it's important to note that sometimes we look at suspected serious injury crashes and it's easy to undercount the true cost of that. But the reality is that for many of those crashes, people will experience debilitating injuries for the rest of their lives. So in addition to the people that were lost, the family members, we also have a lot of people who will never be the same after these crashes, quite frankly. And a little bit of insight about crashes by travel mode. So when you look at fatal and serious crashes combined, you can see that vehicles account for 82%. Pedestrians 14% and bicyclists 4%. But when you look at fatal crashes alone, you can see the number for pedestrians and bicyclists jumps pretty dramatically to 22% and 9% respectively. And we highlight this really just to highlight the enhanced vulnerability of those outside of the vehicle. And then the last quick piece of information I want to present to you is just on primary crash factors. So we have additional information in the annual safety report, which is in your packets, so you can review that. You can review that at your leisure. You can always email me. But 4 out of the 5 primary crash factors for both fatal crashes alone and serious and fatal crashes combined are the same. Those are intersection, lane departure, speeding, and unrestrained occupants. So those are the 4 that I also, obviously, I update this each year and those never change. And then the 5th factor for fatal crashes alone is pedestrians, so 25% there. And percentage of serious injury and fatal crashes, it is drivers as the 5th factor. But as I noted, I wanted to keep this quick for you all. Please feel free to ask me questions currently, or if you have any additional questions once you have time to review it. But thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea.
Wrap it up.
Actually, I have a few items. So just a reminder, the IMPO has what we call federal certification once every 4 years. We did complete that process kind of right during that policy time period in April. We are expecting think we're 4 to 6 weeks to the first draft of the report. I could speculate what's going to be in that report, but it is just going to be speculation. We had good dialogue and conversation. Overall tone in the room was good. But it's their job to find some things that we could be doing better. I expect that. I expect a few corrective actions. I expect a few recommendations and hopefully some accolades on some things we're doing well. So we'll see. I will keep you posted once we get those reports. FHWA will not be reporting out themselves. Typically, that is something they do. Their directives, they are not doing that anymore. So you will see me probably report out on the findings of the report, which is fine. They did offer to meet with the chair and vice chair in a small conversation if we needed that. I don't think we will, but if we want it, it is available. So also wanted to let everybody know, if you haven't heard, INDOT through Road School or any of, I'm sure they'll start pushing it out on their e-newsletter. Ashtoware is the new safety module that INDOT is going to at my staff as part of the testing team. So excited about it. So excited for you guys to start using it. You will see us once those trainings and once you guys have access to it, you will push it out in our newsletters to make sure you guys are at the trainings. I don't know the nuances of why we're so excited about it, but we are very excited about it and they wanted to share the enthusiasm. So FYI on that. Also, we are doing a speaker series this year. Our next speaker series is in August and it's on micromobility. We have who's known social media as the Ohio bike lawyer and Carmel coming to talk about micromobility specifically as we're starting to have scooters and e-bikes and multi-use paths and the safety and how to handle all of that. So that is at the Indiana History Center, Historical Society downtown. So just if you are interested in that, feel free to share it with staff and we would love to see everybody there. I will be sending out an email. So there's been a conversation or there was a question asked about SEA 179 enhanced asset management plans. Daniel Johnston, looking at you. I feel like this was your question. I did get a follow-up email from INDOT. Thank you, Brandon. Yesterday, followed up on that. Kind of what, so where can we learn more about enhanced management plan? This enhanced asset management plan was not created by INDOT and is non-existent outside of the definition of the bill itself. When it comes to CCMG selections and awards, the 179 states the department may give preference to projects submitted by local units. Since it's a may, INDOT does not intend to use this as criteria for eligibility, preference, or scoring in CCMG. So you went through, there's a couple more questions. When I send the PowerPoint follow-up of the strategic plan early next week, I will include this Q&A on enhanced asset management plan so you can see the dialogue from INDOT for clarity purposes, but it doesn't look like that actually will kind of the enhanced part of it come to fruition. So
good.
Any questions regarding that? That was my last update item. Any other items that I missed? Staff? Okay. Motion.
Last words, motion to adjourn. Oh, Christine.
Is anyone tracing or following the effect of the deferral of state and federal taxes on what's it will do to our transportation plan?
So I've asked questions on the impacts to INDOT when I met with the commissioner. Indianapolis happened to be in the room, so I learned the impacts to them. I've heard rumors that there's intent for the General Assembly to make INDOT whole. I have not heard about locals. Gary, you have
So
your,
there is a big push on that, the AIM and several others to try to get some of the state additional funds, the surplus released to offset the reductions of the gas tax reduction. I assume most of you carry about 2 or 3 months working capital just to cover things like this to happen, but as we pointed out that though we're using that working capital as we replenish it, So they're looking to make an NDOT whole, and they are looking at counties and towns and cities as well. But be active politically to make sure that the state surplus backfills you, or else you'll have to plan on probably making your work capital whole next year. So they're alert. I believe Senator Kreider and Senators or Representative Morrison are working that.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Karen Florence.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. No.